Good afternoon. Try and get this thing focused, stabilized. So yeah, I thought I'd make a video. My wife went to do an errand here in Southwest Michigan. It is May the 9th, 2024. It is 1:15 in the afternoon. I was just about to put away a page of my diary. I'm on page, so this is 412. And now I will start page 413 for the year 2024. And I thought what I would do quickly before my wife gets home, I'm listening for her, is I read in the morning. This morning I read Reformed Systematic Theology, Church in Last Things, Volume 4 by Beeke and Smalley. Yeah, I read that for my morning devotions. My wife and I, we read through the book. We read a chapter from the Acts of the Apostles, and then we read from the Valley of Vision. So I thought, what am I going to read this afternoon? I don't think that thing's on straight. Yeah, so in the mornings I try to read Christian books, and then I try to read something secular. So I thought what I would do is show you what I read in the afternoons, late afternoons, early evenings, at night. And I wasn't really sure what to read, so I try to read something different every day. So this is kind of like what I'll be reading, or what I look at to read the rest of the day. I got a book in the mail. I've been started reading The Empire of Guns, A Violent Making of the Industrial Revolution by Peiffer. I can't pronounce her name. I came across this book. I was watching a video from a booktuber, and the person he had a Zoom with mentioned this book and it really caught my eye because it's something I'm interested in. So I ordered it from Amazon, and I've read maybe 27 pages. So I read this, and then I have been reading, I showed you this, The Last Days of Mankind by Karl Kost. I'll probably read this next, after I make this video. I haven't read it in a while. Well, not this week. And this is translated from, I think it's the German, translated from the German by, who is it by? Translated by Fred Brigham and Edwards Timms. Complete text. So I have one of the people who this Edward Timms, who's involved in this project. I bought his memoirs. I was supposed to get those in the mail sometime, maybe this week or next week. I'm still reading The Dead, a novel by Christine Kreck, translated from the German by Daniel Bowles. I've been kind of difficult to getting into a fiction, but I could finish this in an hour if I wanted to. And then I have been reading in the afternoons, evenings, night, Straw Dogs, Thoughts on Humans and Other Animals by John Gray. So I have been reading this. And I also been reading John Gray's book, right here, The Immortalization Commission, Science and Strange Quest to Cheat Death by John Gray. I have been reading this. And I've been reading at night City Poet, The Life and Times of Frank O'Hara by Brad Couch. Reading Supernatural War, Magic, Divination and Faith during the First World War by Owen Davies. These are the kind of things I read. I'll probably read something like this for an hour, and then I'll read something like this for an hour, and then I'll read Straw Dogs. I've been having a hard time getting into my fiction. I read this last night before going to bed. I did read this the other day in the afternoons. The Freaks came out to write a definitive history of the Village Voice, the radical paper that changed American culture by Tricia Romano. And I should get back into reading this memoir, The Voice, My Life at Village Voice, an unauthorized account by Ellen Frankfurt. She was a writer for the Village Voice back in the 70s. This came out, I think, in 76. So I have to get back into reading this. I have been reading this, The Freaks Came Out to Write. As far as fiction, you have to be in a certain mood to read The Boredom by Alberto Moreno. There's a picture of him in the back. I really want to get back, but you got to be in a certain mental space to read him. But I want to get back into reading this. This is translated out of the Italian by Agnes Davison. And I want to get back. I could also read this afternoon, The Slip, The New York City Street That Changed American Art Forever by Prudence Peiffer. And I want to get back into reading The Obscene Bird of Night by Jose D'Anzo, unabridged, and this is translated out of Spanish by Hardy St. Martin, Leonard Mades, and Megan McDowell. So, but you know, I have to get into a mood to read these two things, and it's more like early evening, nighttime reading, these kinds of things. And I want to get back into reading Hangover Square, or The Man with Two Minds, a story of the darkest Earl's Court in the year 1939 by Patrick Hamilton. I picked this up at Blue Stockings. This was published in 1944. It's an old edition I found used at the Blue Stockings for 50 cents. I got this for 50 cents. Also, a nonfiction thing is Born Under Saturn, The Character and Conduct of Artists, a documented history from antiquity to the French Revolution by Margaret and Ralph Wittenhauer. Yeah, I can read this. I've read almost 190 pages of this, and I can read this afternoon. I could read The Voice this afternoon. That's kind of easy on my brain. And I could read The Slip, The New York City Street That Changed American Art Forever, Robert Indiana, Ellsworth Kelly, Angus Martin, James Rosenquist, Delphine Seyrig, Lenore, Tawney, and Jack Youngerman. They were all painters at that time period in the late 50s, early 60s. So I could read this. Now, when it comes to Mrs. McIntosh, My Darling by Margaret Young, This I tend to read just around 7 until about, I go down the lower level. I probably read it. I try to read at least 20 pages a night. Now, I didn't do it last night. For some reason, I got into reading The City Poet. But I do plan to read this. I'm on page 537. It has 1,310 pages. But I do plan to read this probably this evening. Today is a Thursday, yeah. So I'll probably read this. Margaret Young, Mrs. McIntosh, My Darling, by Margaret Young. I read this the other day, The Freaks Came Out to Write, by Teresa Romano. I'll probably read this afternoon, The Slip, by Prudence Peiffer. Also The Voice, A Life of the Village Voice, an unauthorized account by Alan Frankfurt. I also could read A Born Under Saturn by Margaret and Rudolph Wittenkauer. Now when it comes to fiction, Hangover Square, I don't know, or The Obscene Bird of Night by Jose Doranzo, I don't know. Maybe I could just handle reading my darling Mrs. McIntosh, My Darling, but these things I don't know about fiction right now. I have a hard time getting my mind in a certain place, but I really enjoy reading The City Poet, The Life and Times of Frank O'Hara by Brad Gooch. This is a very well written biography on the poet Frank O'Hara. Really enjoy reading it. Very well written, very interesting. Really find, now as a Christian I don't agree with John Gray, but he's very thought-provoking. This would be a good book, if you could, in an adult Sunday school class that is conservative, evangelical, Bible-believing, and how they refute this guy. But I have been reading these two books by John Gray, and I do plan to buy his book, The Black Mass, Apocalyptic Religion and the Death of Utopia. I do plan to get that end of May. But I am reading these two books by John Gray, and he is thought-provoking. I don't agree with him, but he makes me think. I have been enjoying reading The Spiritual War, the Supernatural War, Magic, Divination, and Faith During the First World War by Owen Davies. And I want to get back into reading The Dead by Kristen Kreck. And like I said, I'll probably read this after I make this video. The Last Days of Mankind by Karl Kraus. He lived from 1874 and he died in 1936. Was a foremost German language satirist of the 20th century. As editor of the journal The Torch, he conducted a sustained critique of propaganda in the press. Expressed through polemic essays with witty aphorisms and some kind of poems. And I will read maybe today or at least this week, Empire of Guns, The Violent Making of the Industrial Revolution by can't pronounce her name. She is a professor of history at Stanford University. She's the author of Spies in Arabia, The Great War and the Cultural Foundations of Britain's Covert Empire in the Middle East. Her writings has appeared in The Slate, The Financial Times, The Nation, among other publications. She lives in Stanford, California with her family. So yeah, this is very thought-provoking. I really have been enjoying reading it thus far. I also have these two books I've shown you. The Kloss Project by Jonathan Franzen and the Vienna Coffee House Wits 1890 to 1938, translated, edited with an introduction by Arnold B. Segel. Yeah, I have these on top of my Last Days of Mankind. So that's what's going on here. I got books coming in the mail. I still got those used books down the lower level. I got stuff coming in the mail. But these are the kind of books I kind of look at. What am I going to read this afternoon? What am I going to read this evening? What am I going to read tonight? What am I going to read before I go to bed? I usually don't read, unless I'm in a certain spiritual state, Christian books during the day. I kind of read my Christian books from about 7 until 12:30, 1 o'clock. And then I'm always writing in my diary. Of course, my wife and I, we had devotions this morning. We're going through the Acts of the Apostles in the New Testament. And then we read a devotional book, The Valley of Vision, and then we have a time of prayer. And then I always write in my diary. Today, it's a cold, rainy, gray day. It's not sunny, it's not warm. This is kind of weather you have here in Michigan around May. It really gets warm around the end of June. But due to global warming, our weather patterns are all screwed up. And so you don't really know what weather is like anymore. It's just, you can't predict really, due to the global warming. So that's it. This has been 17 minutes. Don't really have anything to... I have been feeling kind of anxious lately, unsettled. I don't know, I've been trying to figure out why I don't feel good inside. I feel anxious. I feel trepidation. I feel, maybe it's just what's going on in Gaza, what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on in our presidential elections, what's going on in our country about homelessness, global warming, drug addiction, poverty, how much wealth is held by very few people. It's just, and so it's just, I have to just pray every day that the Lord will help me to keep my mind on eternal things and not get kind of freaked out. I'm always praying for a right perspective on life. Like tonight, my wife, she goes to church, today's Ascension Day. And they're going to have an Ascension Day service, I think, tonight. Or is it, I think it's the 12th. And so you believe that Christ ascended and he reigns. He's seated at the right hand of God. He is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And this is his world. He created it. He sustains it. He governs it. So I have to really pray for faith, to trust that God is doing all things right, that he is just, that he is holy, that he is righteous, and that he will punish the wicked, and he will bring all his children to glory, saved by sovereign free grace. Anyway, recommend this new book, The Empire of Guns, The Violent Making of the Industrial Revolution. Can't pronounce her name. There's a picture of here around the thing. So this is going on 20 minutes. I suppose I'll sign off, put my diary away, download this video, type up the list of these books, and hope you're all having a good reading week. This is the Thursday. Yeah. So until next time, bye.